Well, can I welcome everyone to this meeting of the Skye and Raasay Area Committee. This meeting will be recorded and will be able to view on the Highland Council YouTube page. I'm sure everybody now is familiar with the online protocols, and everybody will have received a copy of them in advance of this meeting. If you do have any technical issues, there is support online if needed, so just get in touch with Ian, who speak to. So yeah, hopefully there'll be no technical issues, but if there is, please get in touch with him. Today we're joined by Fiona Mcbain, who is going to be the clerk for today. Welcome, Fiona, to your first Skye and Raasay Area Committee.
Thank you.
Fiona, I'm just going to hand over to you for items 1 and 2. I know there's only 4 of us, but to follow procedure, we do a roll call. And if there's any declarations of interest, I know you have had one in advance of this meeting. Thanks, Fiona.
Okay, thank you. I'll do a quick roll call. Councillor Finlayson.
Here.
Councillor Gordon.
Here.
Councillor MacLeod.
Here, Fiona.
And Councillor Munro.
Present.
They're just here, so no apologies for absence. And I have one declaration of interest from Councillor Callum Munro, who has declared a financial interest as his wife is employed by the Highland Council and works part-time in a primary school in the Portree ASG due to the general nature of the paper, and that no decisions with implications for resourcing are involved. And having applied the test in the Councillor's Code of Conduct, he concludes that this interest does not preclude him from any involvement in the discussion. And are there any further declarations of interest?
No.
Okay.
Thank you, Fiona. Before we go on to item 3, I'm sure we were all deeply saddened to hear this weekend of the passing of David Noble, who was the former Chief Executive of the Skye and Lochalsh District Council for 21 years. He left Skye and moved to Inverness, where he became the Chief Executive of the Highland Tourist Board, another term that he was successful as the leader of, in a season where, like the old District Council, the Highland Tourist Board thrived under his leadership and direction. Although living in Inverness since leaving Portree, he never lost his interest in Skye and Lochalsh. He was a keen runner, and I'm sure some people here today will remember the early days of the Skye Half Marathon, where David was very instrumental in setting up and being involved in. Latterly there, David became the independent facilitator when Sir Lewis Ritchie finalised his report and our community started to implement his findings. And many in our local community were delighted when he became that independent facilitator. And he was very instrumental in setting up the frameworks and the process, and he built a solid foundation for where things are at now in terms of the options appraisal. David left that role due to ill health, and today I think we as a community, as elected members, as even officers, remember David's time here on Skye. He was held with deep regard, and many in our communities, whether they are our constituents or staff within our councils, will tell you that under David's leadership in local government, it seemed to be one of the best times in terms of the whole localism agenda, which we give credit to David for, in terms of how the model of local government was delivered at that time. And I think today we are thankful for his leadership and his wisdom and his integrity, and the fact that he was such an approachable person, and staff even to this day in Tenancy who work with him will tell you he was one of the most approachable people that they worked with. So today we just want to stop and think today of all that David did for our communities, and our thoughts today are with his wife Hilary and all the family at this sad time. Thank you. So item number 3 on our agenda papers, which is the minutes, and they have been circulated for information, and they were approved at the full council meeting, which was held on the 10th and 11th of September 2020. So they are in our minutes. Okay, so we're going on to agenda item 4, which is a presentation from the Highlands and Islands Enterprise, and we welcome Stuart McPherson from HIE. He is going to give us a presentation on HIE's role in terms of the economic recovery in Skye, Lochaber and Wester Ross. Good morning, Stuart, and welcome to our area committee.
Good morning, Councillor Gordon, and thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. I'll just share my screen so we can get the presentation up. Can I just check you can see that okay?
Yeah, that's fine, Stuart.
That's great, thank you. So good morning. I have 7 slides that look at our current economic circumstances and the actions that we, and indeed in collaboration with others, are taking to lead us through the recovery phase. I'm going to talk about demographics in the labour market, unemployment, employment, the GVA impact that COVID has had. We're going to look briefly at the vulnerability indices. Then we're going to summarise where we're at and touch on some of the initiatives that we have underway in terms of what we are doing. So things we know already: very low density in terms of population, older regionally, older than regionally and nationally. We have a lower employment rate and a higher self-employment rate. The figures for unemployment and the rates look quite stark, and I need to just clarify one issue at the moment. Obviously, very relieved that furlough continues at the moment. The unemployment figures are based on the claimant count, and enhancements to universal credit as part of the UK government's response to coronavirus has meant that an increasing number of people became eligible for unemployment related benefit support, although still employed, albeit on furlough. So consequently, the changes in the claimant count may not be due wholly to changes in the number of people who are actually unemployed, or who are certainly actively seeking work at the moment. We're obviously hugely cautious about these figures at the moment, whilst we monitor the impact of the seasonality of our economy and as furlough tapers off into the new year. So what we can say is categorically is far more people are claiming forms of benefit than previously. And if we take these rates, then that has increased by 5.2 percentage points overall across Lochaber, Skye and Wester Ross. That's the area that we've managed to do this analysis for. So a rate of 6.9% from a position of 1.7% in August 19. I should have said these figures are August 19 to August 20 to give us a snapshot.
Can I ask, should the presentation be moving? We've just got your first slide. We're not seeing any other slides.
Bear with me. Thank you, John, for pointing that out. Just bear with me. Can you see that one, John?
No, we're still only seeing your slide number 1.
That's strange.
That's
There
it.
we go. Yeah, that's better now.
Okay, my apologies. Okay, can you see the
Yeah, it's good.
unemployment slide, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I was explaining there about the claimant count. Thankfully, that explanation is in very tiny print at the bottom, so hopefully not seeing the slide initially hasn't impacted too much initially. So the unemployment rate is 6.9 currently, up from 1.7, with the caveat that I've given on how unemployment is currently calculated. Clearly concerning also, youth unemployment rate gone from 2.1 to 10.7. And even if we home in on travel to work areas, for example, Portree, 0.9 to 7.2. Later on in the presentation, we'll touch on how we are monitoring these figures and trying to understand actual unemployment alongside our partner organisations, in particular Job Centre Plus. Now, again, these are facts which you will know, but the precise detail has been quantified here so that we can fully understand our employment sectors. So the top three in Lochaber, Skye and Wester Ross: accommodation and food services, human health and social work, and wholesale and retail. They account for about 9,000 jobs across the area, and 52% of total employment are in sectors exposed to the effects of COVID-19, and that's higher than the average regionally, 39%, and nationally, 37%. And now look at the GVA impacts. Can I just check that you can see the GVA impact slide?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So these figures are calculated at Highland level in collaboration with the Highland Council. GVA in Highland estimated to decline by 756 million. And when we add together some of the key sectors: accommodation, food service activities, manufacturing, construction, these sectors are expected to have a hardest hit of a greater concentration of employment in Lochaber, Skye and Wester Ross. And clearly, still a considerable degree of uncertainty, especially in relation to the further waves of COVID and associated restrictions, and how these may impact disproportionately on certain sectors. The vulnerability indices look at employment exposure, so in some respects summarising some of these factors that we've looked at. Share of jobs in sectors most exposed to COVID is higher in Lochaber, Skye and Wester Ross than regionally and nationally. And Highland is ranked third out of Scotland's 32 local authorities for jobs at risk. And clearly we also have Brexit upon us, and in Lochaber, Skye and Wester Ross, 70% of communities at the data zone level are within the 20 most vulnerable communities to Brexit in Scotland. That's higher than the proportion across Highland and regionally, both 43%. So in summary, Lochaber, Skye and Wester Ross like to be harder hit than Scotland and regional averages. So yes, perhaps the facts that we could assume, but these slides have helped actually quantify the scale of the issue. Decline in GVA, a dominance in the tourism sector, a higher share of employment in 5 sectors most exposed to COVID, high level of self-employment, and existing vulnerability to Brexit. So, what are we doing? Well, our focus is on collaboration with all partners. Our priority is jobs, and our goal is recovery. This is just a snapshot of some of the things that are ongoing at the moment. We've rolled out a digital enablement grant, and many businesses have taken up this new initiative. We've upped investment in destination management organisations to support tourism, and we've had a specific hotel support programme in conjunction with the government, looking at the larger employers. We've rolled out a community-led tourism initiative over these past number of months. There's a UK market focus for food and drink companies. We've established a Young Companies Capital Investment Grant Scheme. We work closely in partnership with Skills Development Scotland, the Highland Council and Job Centre Plus with our partnership action for continuing employment. We meet regularly and monitor the situation with regards to unemployment, as I've mentioned previously. And some new, very welcome initiatives that we've been working on for some time. We at West Highland College have led an application to the Advanced Manufacturing Challenge Fund, and are one of only 12 organisations throughout Scotland to deliver an advanced manufacturing project, mainly based in Fort William. However, much of the equipment that will be purchased as a result of this manufacturing project is mobile, and West Highland College will be taking it around all its sites and enabling small businesses in our whole area to benefit from this. And this is clearly about helping to increase the pace of diversifying our economy. This project, and with West Highland College being one of 12, is also linked to the National Manufacturing Institute for Scotland, which is based in Shannon, just beside Glasgow Airport. So the project is just established, and the college are working their way through procurement for the equipment, and there will be more information and detail about this and how SMEs can take advantage of it in due course. Working very closely with the Highland Council on the Skye and Raasay investment plan, collaborating together, and we look forward to hearing more of that later. We had an initial engagement last week about our public sector co-location feasibility project in Portree, and indeed very keen to work closely with the council on the onshore side of Uig, many of the Uig industrial estate beside the pier. Clearly many of the partners involved in that proposed redevelopment are also public sector. And we continue to monitor the community planning partnership priorities, in essence looking at inequalities in localities and how we can best affect the work of the community planning partnership to deal with some of the factors that we've just gone over this morning. Okay, I will end there and I'll stop sharing, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Stuart, for your presentation and for all the work that you're doing. We really appreciate it. So if any members have any questions or comments, just raise your hands. Councillor Finlayson.
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. I mean, I think that brought together a lot of the concerns and the pressures we're under, and also, really importantly, we're looking at recovery. So I'm just going to raise a couple of things, Stuart, you can maybe come in at the end, if you don't mind. I think it probably was quite interesting to hear, and maybe we didn't appreciate that tourism and accommodation and the food sector accounts for 22% of jobs. That's huge. In terms of construction, I mean, we know that we're ambitious in terms of our house building. We're ambitious in terms, hopefully, of our new schools. Is there a big impact in terms of construction, in terms of getting resources? I mean, I know that prices of capital projects will have gone up. So really, what's the impact on our area, given it is a rural area and we do have issues with the transporting the resources to the island? I was really interested to hear about the digital enablement grant. So again, maybe just give us a wee bit of information. Sure, what does that actually mean? Is it hardware, software, training? What is it that entails? Again, maybe a wee bit of info about the Young Companies Investment Grant Scheme, which I think is really, really important, because I'm sure especially young companies will really be struggling even more perhaps than established companies. And of course, we're really, really excited about the localism agenda and what we're going to be doing as part of the Skye Raasay Investment and Infrastructure Plan, the public co-sector co-location. And I think maybe you've mentioned Portree and Uig there. I would also probably add Broadford, given our ambitions for the new school and the community hub, and maybe relocating services to that hub when it's finalised. So really, thanks for that. So these are just some comments and a couple of questions.
Thank you. Stuart, do you want to come in there?
Yes, of course. Thank you, John. Yes, all excellent points. Absolutely. So one of the factors that was characteristic of our area prior to COVID was the hugely tight labour market, and whilst we will be continuing to monitor the impact to construction, clearly for the period when there was total lockdown and furlough, that was a huge impact. Thankfully, there was furlough. We see the construction firms picking up well, though. Many are even recruiting and still having a challenge finding labour. We hope that a sufficient number of ongoing projects, house building and other public sector projects that we're referring to, we hope we can ensure that there is a steady pipeline of these projects, so we continue to bolster what's happening in construction. So I'd say it's early days. We keep a very close watch on it. I think we're fortunate, for example, that Housing Association in particular picked up on a lot of construction projects, where I know in other parts of the Highlands, actually many of the housing authorities, not the Highland Council, I should say, other housing authorities decided not to proceed with a number of projects. So we're grateful in that respect in terms of their ability to push through these capital projects. On the digital enablement grant, so yes, it's a mixture of capital and expert support to help businesses. Perhaps they would have wished to install a greater degree of digital equipment, but perhaps it wasn't the highest priority in previous times. Trading now has meant that it's been an absolute priority, so we've helped them across a range of sectors, food and drink in particular, get online faster, sell more product. The Young Companies Grant Scheme, again, capital investment, companies under 5 years old, capital investment, non-sector specific, again to try and certainly in particular help with diversification away from tourism, not exclusively, but to help there too. And yes, forgive me, public sector co-location, I should have mentioned Broadford there as well, absolutely. Yep.
Thank you, Stuart. Councillor McLeod.
Thanks, Stuart. Thanks very much for that very informative presentation. And I see obviously from the figures that we do have indeed a mountain to climb with the challenges expected with the impact of COVID, and obviously with our reliance on tourism, particularly highlighting the fact that Highland is the third highest for job cuts, being at risk with local authorities in Scotland. And I welcome particularly the initiative with looking at inequalities in localities. I think that's to be commended. And I think you've answered all the questions, thanks, on construction, which Councillor Finlayson asked there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Stuart, again for your presentation. It's good to get an update. It's quite a stark picture. Our vulnerability in the current climate is clear. The high unemployment rate and just this uncertainty we have going ahead. It's really quite a challenging few months ahead. Just a couple of questions, I suppose. It's great, diversification is so important, and you've talked about the advanced manufacturing project. I just wonder where you see maybe perhaps opportunities arising for diversification in the months ahead, and also just I'm interested in the onshore situation at Uig, Stuart, and just is there anything you can tell us about that today, about the developments with perhaps the public sector in Uig, Stuart? Thanks.
Thank you, Gil. So on the advanced manufacturing, if I can give a couple of examples. So for example, the equipment that will be purchased alongside the kind of personnel expertise that will be provided as a result of this project might help, say, a small specialist bakery who previously understandably cannot afford the additional labour to perhaps develop its packaging system to the degree it needs. Will be introduced to some new equipment that will illustrate to it that should it be able to in due course invest in the capital equipment, their packaging could be done a lot quicker, and the additional benefit is they spend more time actually focusing on the quality of the product rather than the packaging. Also, for example, without being specific to any one business, but we have a number of very innovative businesses that manufacture things like soap or candles. And again, another angle could be the introduction of robotics to try and work with the businesses to see if they can increase production flow line and become more productive. Once some of the equipment's purchased and we have some online visual material of online videos, very much looking forward to sharing those things, because I think you make an excellent point. It's about ensuring that we try and demonstrate to people that whilst it's called advanced manufacturing, actually there's a very practical and real benefit that we need to demonstrate to even very small businesses. So we look forward to doing that. In relation to onshore and UIG, now understandably the council have been negotiating with Transport Scotland in relation to the fund to enable the pier works to go ahead. So the onshore aspects of that project are directly related, and we've been working very closely in partnership with the Highland Council team looking at that. So I think once the Highland Council, hopefully they will receive the level of funds commensurate to the tenders, then we can pick that project up and work in detail. It is a complicated one, but it includes the private sector who are currently there. It's largely for the benefit of the requirement to grow private jobs that we need to do this, because the Calmac shed will, or the Calmac office will move to where the new car park is going to be. It will enable the fire service to move if they can manage to move that. It might enable the brewery to expand once the initial kind of works are undertaken. So it's quite exciting collaboration project. Quite hard work, a lot of factors to bring together, but we look forward to picking up with the council on it in due course.
Thank you, Callum. Thank you, Stuart. Stuart, recently I read a report about universal credit, and one of the findings was that from March till August, that universal credit claims in Portree alone had gone up by 186%. And I think in one of your slides you mentioned unemployment has gone up. Was it 6.9?
Yeah.
Is that since lockdown?
Yes. So and forgive me because I'm not sure that slide was up when I talked about it. So the issue is that the unemployment figure also includes those who are claiming an element of universal credit. So they might be still employed but on furlough, but with a reduction of wage, they're eligible for universal credit.
Yeah.
So they are actually included in the actual unemployment figure at the moment. We'll obviously keep a close eye on that because we're worried how things will be, in particular over the absolute middle of winter. So it's difficult to identify who exactly is formally and completely out of work at the moment and actively seeking employment. So these aspects have to be looked at together. We obviously will find out more once in the spring, once furlough comes to the end, and what the unemployment rates are going to be like there. But we keep an eye on it very closely, in particular because whilst there is the detail of the formal figures, actually liaising with Job Centre Plus every fortnight to monitor what they actually notice in terms of people presenting as actually formerly unemployed is very important. Thankfully, that actual figure at the moment appears to be relatively low because of furlough and because of the enhancement of universal credit, but it's something clearly to keep a constant watch on.
Yeah. And also, like, there's a lot of discussion, and I'm sure you're the same, and it would be up in your slides about just, improving digital connectivity across the whole piece. Then, again, on Friday at Skye Connect, it was brought up just how that would make a huge impact just for so many lives and even for so many businesses, that, if that connectivity was what it should be, it would just bring a different place and even bring jobs to the area. And I was reading at the weekend that, there was meetings with the Highland Council last month with the Scottish Government and UK governments in terms of the need for super fast broadband and the infrastructure for better connectivity. And that would just make a huge difference just to our whole area, even just in terms of people visiting the island or even working from home, the fact that they could work and live here and just work to the ends of the earth, really, just from their laptop. So, I mean, these things are so significant to us in this area.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. We have a bit of work at the moment to identify the areas that are suffering most at the moment. There is quite an unequal picture at the moment the way broadband was rolled out. Some areas, for example, fairly fortunate in Uig at the moment, where it's been rolled out, but clearly some aspects of, for example, Struan are not so. So we're working trying to ensure that they've got information about the rollout of R100 and the voucher scheme. And should those things not be feasible, we're equally trying to inform people in terms of what the other options are at the moment, whilst we await more detail.
Yeah. No, thanks for that, Stuart. Is there any other questions or comments at this stage for Stuart? No. I know you're going to join us later on, Stuart, aren't you, for item 9, the Skye and Raasay investment plan?
Yes, absolutely.
Approach. Yeah. Well, we appreciate all the work that you and everybody at HIE are doing, and again, we're encouraged with everything that we've heard this morning. It's just making a huge impact and a difference, and we just want to put on record our thanks to you and your colleagues.
Thank you very much appreciate that.
Thanks, Stuart.
Thank you. Bye for now.
See you later on.
Yes, see you later.
Thank
Bye-bye.
You. Okay, item number 5 is the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Local Committee Performance Report. And we're joined by Mike Collier. And I think you might have a colleague with you. Is that right?
I did, Chair, but
you did.
Unfortunately, due to IT issues, he's unable to connect effectively at the Portree station. So we'll seek to get him in for the next meeting, and hopefully that'll get remedied.
Oh, no worries. I was conscious that he was waiting in the lobby there for a wee while, so he was waiting in the lobby and then he's got IT issues. That's not the best start, is it? But anyway, it's good to have you, Mike, this morning, and thanks for your report, and I'll just let you speak to it, and then we'll have questions or comments.
Okay, that's great, Chair. Thank you very much, and good morning to you all. Many thanks for the opportunity to provide an overview of the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service report for Quarter 2. Overall, a positive report and a very low incident count for the area. All incidents attended have been of a less significant type, and all were successfully resolved with no casualties. We had accidental dwelling fire, was a chimney fire, which was minimal, a couple of deliberate fires refuse, and 3 RTCs, which were standby and making safe only. Quite surprising considering the climate and the tourism and things like that. I expected more, but I'm pleased to say that's where we are. We continue to work with our other partners to improve local outcomes for our communities, and anticipate in the latter half of 2021, all going well, we may be able to resume multi-agency training and practices. And obviously that'll improve how we deliver our services. None of these incidents have any outcomes which will require any further intervention at this time. Our youth statistics are lower than the Highland area average, and no single premise is identified as a cause for concern. One of the key areas I'd like to discuss is our station availability continues to be good across the majority of our stations, despite the challenges that we face for recruitment. Our local crews provide an excellent commitment to the local community, and I'll take this opportunity to commend them for this support, considering they're below establishment in most of their stations, and some considerably so. We anticipate a small increase in numbers in December and January due to some successful recruiting, and continue to be extremely proactive in this area of our business. That kind of concludes my report for today, and I'm happy to take any questions. It's nice when I don't have too much to have to discuss with you.
No, that's good. Well, thanks for this report. Councillor MacLeod.
Morning, Mike. Thanks very much for your report. It was just a small question, just when you give a breakdown of the gender balance within recruitment. I was just wondering that there seems to be quite a low instance of female hire staff. I just wondered if there was anything that was the reason for that, or you could do more to encourage female candidates to come into role. Thanks.
That's a great question, Councillor, and as an organisation, we are very much looking to increase that diversity, which is more reflective of our communities. We have had, unfortunately, 2 or 3 females which have applied, and for one reason or another, they've either pulled out at the later stages or they failed the fitness. I actually have in the system just now one for Dunvegan. We had one which was coming into Broadford, but she's moved to Kyle. So rather than lose her as a recruit, I've asked them to take her on at Kyle. So that improves that situation there. Raasay has a female joining imminently. She's going through the process in November there, so she should be on the run soon. And we're looking at potentially staffing another female as well. So it's quite peculiar you should ask that question, because we are going to improve in the next 2 or 3 months. And I feel it's a very personal thing. Having a female on station actually changes the dynamics of a station for the better. And I'm always very, very keen to try and promote that and increase that number of females on stations. Down here in Fort William, for example, we have a station at Loch Allen, which used to be predominantly females. I think there's only 1 male on station, and it run supremely well. So they're much more focused than our male counterparts sometimes. So yes, I will support that and continue to work on that. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Councillor Finlayson.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I mean, I think I've asked you this before, Mike, about recruitment, about school age leavers. And again, I think you told me that 16 was 16 too young. But again, it's that whole issue. If we can get young people involved at an early age, I'm sure that would be a real positive. And the other one is, I suppose everyone would have thought, given the increase in the number of people working from home and using IT equipment, and probably I do know, and I have been guilty of it in the past, 5 plugs into one socket or whatever. That's something that you've noticed Highland-wide, or is it not really been an issue?
So thanks, Councillor. I'll cover the first one. We did discuss the school age and the leavers, the 16-year-olds, and I'm very conscious that, as Stuart intimated there, we have that sort of unemployment and employability issues in the area. So prior to our unfortunate situations with COVID, I'd been having a discussion with some of our colleagues in Caithness and the Dornoch area who'd run cadet schemes, and they were very successful, gave them an employability certificate at the end of it, and it's coming out of the West as well. So we would like to really have a focus and a drive on that once we get to a position where we can do so. And I think that will probably work if you consider Skye, you consider Kyle, you consider Ardmurchan. We can have a look at that for all those areas and say that's something we want to be proactive about. So that is definitely on my agenda as a to-do, but it's limited, obviously, at this moment in time. Yes, I would have expected an increase. Whether we've been sufficiently proactive in social media, media campaigns, etc., just advising, take care, be careful. We expect an increase not only from, as you say, electricals, from consumption of alcohol at home, people with mental health issues, and I've had that conversation with Linda as well, in regards to the fact that they're not getting the support they used to get. We're coming into a period of time where generally over this sort of Christmas, sort of December period, we may see an increase in that. I think if I was to reflect upon Q3, we've seen a slight upwards trend, but nothing on the scale that I expected. Highland-wise and nationally, we've certainly seen in the inner cities, etc., a much more prolific rise in those kind of events. predominantly, unfortunately, been suicides. That's what we've seen an awful lot of. Okay, but yes, we do have. I've made my teams very aware that continue to train in BA, continue to train in your core skills, in case we find an upturn in these events, so we're prepared for them.
Thank you.
That's just your question.
Thank you. Monroe.
Thank you, Mike, for your report this morning, and it's great to see just such low incidences of many of the things we might have expected to increase. Just want to thank you, thank all your crews, local crews, for all the work and the dedication. And some of those statistics are fantastic for Skye and Raasay, 100% and 99% availability. It's really great. Just it's good to hear that you're having success in recruiting, hoping to get your numbers up in some of these stations. And I just think it's good to hear about this cadet scheme and its success, and if it could be brought to our area and other West Coast areas, I think that's could be a real positive. So thank you very much, Mike. Thanks.
Thank you. Callum?
No problem, Councillor. If I could just come in, Chair, as well, just for a national directive, we've highlighted there. You know, there's a great disparity between retained stations and whole-time stations. The whole-time stations tend to get a bit of a focus because of predominantly where they're located, but there are something like 2/3 more retained stations across the country. So we have a strategic team working on a project just now which says we need to look at recruitment and how we, not only how we employ them, but how we train them, and we need to stop impacting so much upon their primary employment. And how a wee bit more dynamic in our approach. So I would like to think when that comes to fruition in the early part of next year, we'll start to see an improvement in the recruitment process as well, which will aid the situation massively. Okay.
Thank you. I remember at a previous area committee, Mike, you mentioned in terms of recruitment, I think it was Dunvegan area, you struggled to recruit, and that's gone up quite considerably. And we were discussing just how different options about how to recruit in that area. Just wondering how successful were you in terms of that, or what was it that made the jump to 92%?
So I can't take the credit for that. I'm going to pass that straight across to Alistair McLean as the watch commander there. Alistair, as you know, is a local postie, and Alistair goes around doors, knocking on doors, and identifies people he thinks may have the potential. And he's absolutely first class at that. And he's brought a number of individuals in, a very, very varied amount as well. It's been brilliant. We've got some really interesting characters at Dunvegan now. And I'm really pleased how that station's performing because it sits quite isolated compared to everybody else. But that's kind of how we drive. I mean, I'm having these conversations elsewhere that the majority of our teams tend to say, we've spoken to everybody we know in the community. And I'm like, well, what about the ones you don't know? What about the incomers? What about the new blood in the villages, etc.? And surprisingly, these are the ones that we're picking up now, because these are the ones that are coming and going, oh, I never thought about that. So we're even looking at some leaflet drops, drives, walking around, knocking on doors, things like that as we progress through the COVID situation, social media, etc. And obviously the West Highland Free Press, things like that as well. We're discussing with Raymond, my colleague who can't be here today, some open days next year, which will involve, Linda and I have spoken about the Emergency Services Day in September, but one of the things we might be looking at is on a couple of the stations, we'll have an open day where we'll bring resources in and we'll bring individuals in and create garner an interest. So it's a constant evolving thing, and it's a challenge we will continue to face.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Callum, is that an old hand or is that a new hand? Callum Monroe.
Old hand, John, excuse me.
Old hand, yeah. Well, there's nothing else. Thanks very much, Mike, for your report today. And again, I would agree with my work colleagues, giving thanks just to you and to all your colleagues just for the work that you do in our local area. Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Okay, that's very much appreciated. And thank you very much for your time, councillors. And I may be the first to do this, but hope you all have a very happy Christmas. Okay, because I won't see you
happy
before
Christmas
then.
to you too.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
now.
Mike. Bye. Okay, we're on to item number 6, which is the Housing Performance Report, and we're joined by Jenny Bruce. Good morning, Jenny. I think you're on mute. Good morning.
Hi. Morning.
Good to see you this morning, Jenny. And thanks for this report. I'll just let you speak to it, and then I'm sure we'll have a few questions or comments.
Thank you. We've kind of been progressing as well, as COVID normal as we can at the moment. We've had, as you know, a retirement within the maintenance team. We've actually had two during COVID, but one recently. Jimmy left earlier on in the year and retired then, and Kevin retired in October. So there's been successful recruitment to the maintenance officer post in Portree and to the maintenance technician post in Kyle, although obviously there's a resulting vacancy as part of that, and those are sitting with Colin Sharp, the repairs area manager, to progress those. Our average length of times to complete emergency repairs, we're still doing reasonably well. We have been impacted slightly on our more on our routine repairs rather than emergency ones, with the availability of contractors and availability of parts, which seems to be a national shortage in some parts of the business. So that has impacted slightly, but we are still performing well within our emergency repairs. Non-emergency repairs, slightly longer, again, partly due to COVID restrictions. The maintenance team are working well to get through their backlog as best and as quickly as they can. On tenancy management, our relet times have been longer than we would necessarily like. However, we've had very little in the time reported to committee, quarter one and quarter two, with very few relets. We have had slightly more quarter three, and again, our relet times have been impacted slightly by availability of parts to complete our void turnarounds. Rent arrears, there has been a change in the universal credit payment schedules. That has given us this minor improvement in our arrears figures in the last quarter and quarter two. I think we'll see more impact going forward with that. Housing officers, particularly the housing management officers, have been working very supportively with our tenants, looking at how people are coping. Have they been adversely affected financially by COVID? What are their options with that? Looking at welfare support, housing support, and the ISO and move on teams where required. Homelessness, as always, our demand exceeds our availability of locally available temporary accommodation. I believe the low numbers in quarter one may have been impacting COVID because we were very, very low for a period. We are still continuing to increase, and both my housing options officers are regularly, several times a week, taking homeless inquiries. We are doing the best we can and accommodating people locally where possible. But as you know, our definition of local temporary accommodation is focused on Portree, Broadford and Kyle, which is where we have temporary furnished units in Skye and Raasay. Where we are unable to help, we are asking other areas who are coming forward with vacant temporary accommodation that they have, but our clients aren't always able to go out of area to accept that. We have, as you know, closed Woodside, so we now have no HMO temporary accommodation available in Skye and Raasay. That's kind of all I've got to update on, really, so very happy to take any questions you might have.
Yeah, thanks for that report, Jenny. Councillor Finlayson.
Thanks, Jenny. A couple of observations and a couple of questions. In terms of vacancies, I think it's really important that we get all our vacancies filled. I do know how hard the team work and how stretched they can be at times. So the first question, did the COVID-19 affect the availability of the officers we have in place? Did we have the maintenance officers off? In terms of homelessness, I suppose the question is round about the capital programme. We know that Skye and Raasay are really, really busy. We're building new houses. Are there any plans still? We know Cruachan Place is going to be replaced. Are there any other plans for new council builds in the ward? And I suppose, has COVID meant that some of the privately owned buildings that used to perhaps be used for lets. And with the change in short-term lets and tiers and things, are we seeing more of them returning? So is there more capacity to help homelessness that's out with what we actually own?
Thanks for that, Councillor Phillipson. On the vacancies, our team obviously were following the standard council COVID protocols round about shielding, etc. I can double check with Colin and Keith on the maintenance side as to how much the maintenance side was affected and come back to you if that's okay. I don't know the answer to that offhand. The capital programme, council-wise, obviously Cruachan has come down and we've got a new unit going up in there, which will be a much better solution going forward than the old units that came down. They were 16 bed sits. What we have going up is 15 flats with a mix of 11 2-bed and 4 1-bed properties, which will obviously be much more useful going forward than bed sits. We would like to develop the Woodside site. We would also potentially look at other land bank areas that we have in and around Portree, because that is where our major pressures are. We obviously link with Highland and Skye on their building programme as well. We are across the two organisations, they're looking at builds in Dunvegan, obviously Killakin, Broadford. Mo and I were talking about Ardvassar and Slate the other week as well, and there's obviously the staff and properties coming too. With respect to privately owned buildings coming back in, we are aware that there have been some which were holiday lets had taken people in over the COVID period, but that are not looking to take them as permanent tenants. We're not really aware of a huge amount of capacity increase and large numbers turning from holiday let to longer term let. Again, I can check that with landlord registration. Have they had an increase in applications? And get back to you through Willie if that's okay.
Thank you, Jenny. Callum, Councillor MacLeod.
Hi, Jenny. Thanks for that. That was really useful. I mean, I think you've actually touched on some of what I was going to ask. I mean, it was really just obviously with the impact of COVID and a subsequent knock-on effect with homelessness. Has there had to be a significant shift of resources into focusing, addressing the impact of homelessness, and has that maybe affected any other services? Thanks.
As you know, we have 2 housing options officers, 2 housing management officers. My options officers have been very busy with homelessness. We have a secondment housing management assistant who has been focused on homelessness as well during this period. And to be absolutely honest, having her has been a huge help. I'm quite concerned about what will happen after that, because obviously what she's been taking on, I'll go back to the housing options officers as well. It is difficult because for us to turn a property into a temporary homeless unit means we're using a stock property to turn into that, which in turn means it's no longer available to be a permanent outcome for somebody who most likely would be a homeless person. So we've tried to come up with provide the best options possible. We have taken on a couple of new homeless units. We've also made sure that when we are looking at allocations, both ourselves and Highland and Skye are discussing the lists, and at this point in time, the vast majority of allocations are being made to people who are homeless. So there's been a bit of a shift in resources. I'm not meaning to sound like a broken record, we could always do with more. And with the new builds, some of them we will take units to become homeless units. Some we will maybe perhaps take, if there's a transfer, we might take the older property that the transfer person has come from to try and have our stock spread about in different types and different areas as well. Does that help?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Jenny. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Jenny, for your report and for talking to it. I just suppose what's striking is in terms of rent arrears, we're talking about 2.5 times as much rent arrears in just 2 years, Q1 2018 to 2020. So there's obviously a huge issue there for tenants and for us as a Highland Council to address. Just one question, Jenny, in terms of the private accommodation available, is there anything we've been doing or you can do to incentivise private owners to move from short term to let term to longer term? Is there anything, any practical things you're able to do?
I mean, we will always consider, if somebody comes to us and says we would like to rent to the council for use as a homeless unit, we will consider those. We don't get many people coming forward and saying that. And again, each application would be taken on its merits as to whether we would be able to sustainably manage it as a homeless unit and to be able to have it that we did have homeless people in that area looking to live in it. There is an empty homes project and private rented sector project coming in under the Homelessness Task Force, which has been set up recently. David Goldie chairs the task force with Lewis, Hannah and Brian Cameron primarily leading on a lot of the work streams coming out of that. We have representation locally on most of those work streams. And we certainly do have. Leslie is actually going to represent us on the private rented sector and empty homes work stream. The reason I've put Leslie forward is she's hugely experienced in homelessness and she has been in her role as a homeless officer, housing options officer for quite a long time now, and it knows homelessness on Skye inside out. So hopefully we'll be able to get some movement on that, but I'm not really sure that we've seen much change to date.
Thank you, Jenny. In terms of Woodside, at this stage, have you got any plans for that? And also, what would be the timescale, say, for Cruachan in terms of completion? And also going back to Councillor Monroe's point about rent arrears, you know, that quarter in 2018-19, as he says, is a massive jump to 2021, and I was just wondering, you know, what options do people have in terms of rent arrears? Because it's going to be quite hard, I'm sure, to get that money, you know, back, and we all know that people are struggling, but you know, it's quite a jump. And also another big jump is the homeless people that are presenting themselves homeless into 2021, and again, I was just wondering, what is there like main factors to that? Is it the hospitality trade, or is there like just something that is very clear as to what or why there is that jump?
With respect to Woodside, it's now sitting with development and infrastructure with John McCarty and Emma Micklethwaite. I know they are looking at plan options to go to planning. Exactly what stage and time scales, I'm not sure at the moment. Cruachan, again, I haven't got a definitive timescale because it has been delayed because of COVID plus the issues prior to that. Our original time frame we had thought about a year. So with any luck, by this time next year, we will have units on site at Cruachan. Although current builds are being delayed because of impacts of COVID and working restrictions, so that might be a bit pinch of salt. Rent arrears have gone up. We think there may be there has been a change in universal credit payment plans, which hopefully will start bringing things down a bit. We know there is an increase in people going on to universal credit and obviously then waiting the delay for coming into payments. People on furlough, people who simply cannot afford to pay, and there may within that be some people who actually at this point aren't paying for some other reason. We have been impacted in our rent arrears process, which is being looked at centrally, because obviously with the government the government issuing that we will not be doing evictions, etc. Our rent process very much follows a pathway from, can you engage with us about your arrears? Can we support you to engage with us with your arrears through notices, and then eventually to court for eviction, which at this point in time, until recently, we had stopped issuing this because we couldn't progress them beyond that. We are looking at going back to address those in a different manner. Sandra and Sheena have been very proactive in supporting their tenants, referring them on to welfare support, housing support, Move On, and the intensive support officers where they can, and being very sympathetic and trying to find ways and means round. We have some tenants who are paying much smaller payments towards their arrears than we would previously have encouraged, but it's a step in the right direction. I think we're probably too early to be able to predict how quickly that's going to resolve. With terms and homelessness, we have had a big jump. We're getting a lot of homeless inquiries, not all of which go through to full homeless applications. There probably is an impact from hospitality. There's and the change to the hospitality season with COVID. There's also potentially an impact with home dynamics changing because of COVID as well. We're seeing quite a few people coming through as a result of relationship breakups, whether that be between partners or between other members of the family. So Steve and Leslie obviously field those as best they can and try to look at other options. Homeless prevention, is the private rented sector an option? Does somebody want to move away? Could they then maybe link with homeless officers, housing options officers in the area that those people wish to move to, and pass the cases on? I don't think the increase is going to go away anytime soon. They are still seeing several a week coming forward.
Yeah, thanks for that. John, is that an old hand that you've got up, or do you want to ask something else? An old hand. Yeah. Well, thanks very much, Jenny, for your presentation and for all your work. I know it's probably not been easy during lockdown for the housing department, and I think I speak for all of us when I say thanks to all the staff as well, and if you pass on our thanks to the staff, because we all know that you're a small team here in Skye and Raasay, and yet you do an incredible amount of work, and it doesn't go unnoticed by us. So yeah, we want to add our thanks on the record today just for all the work that you do.
Thank you very much. I've got team meeting in a couple on Wednesday, so I'll pass that on because they'll all be there. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Okay, we're on to item number 7, which is the Portree Associated School Groups overview. And good morning to Dawn, who's joining us and presenting this paper.
Good morning, John.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chair and members. You have a copy of the Portree ASG Area Committee report. The current format of the report is under review and will be revised in the near future to take cognizance of both Pan-Highland information and local area context to ensure consistency of content and messages. Some of the data, e.g. school funding, is not up to date due to pressures on the finance team, and that we can only provide data sets that have been through quality assurance procedures previously and are published. Attainment data for high schools and ASGs will be provided in due course via business ward meetings where attainment toolkit will be presented. And apologies that there's an out-of-date hyperlink regarding the ESN information. In terms of the report, members will have seen sight of the report previously. It follows through the normal procedures of template, which starts with details regarding the school roles. There's also in the appendix a reference to a breakdown of the English medium and Gaelic medium roles. The report then goes on to look at Education Scotland Care Inspectorate reports. Members will note that Education Scotland and the Care Inspectorate inspections are currently suspended. Education Scotland is working in collaboration with schools who are on further inspection and with progress reports across the authority at this time. In terms of staffing, ESN staffing, we've got the details given there, and the ESN allocation model had considerable consultation and engagement with ASGs and stakeholders last session. Further engagement and consultation to take place in due course regarding school, ASG and area roles and allocation and management of ESN as we move forward. In terms of funding, we've got the details there highlighted previously, and some of the funding details are out of date. We've got the buildings, the overview of the buildings, looking at suitability as per school estates core facts, and the capacity details for members to see. We've also got the information regarding positive destinations, and you can see there that Portree High School over the last 3 years, the positive destinations have gone up to a current figure of 99.03 as the most up-to-date figure. In terms of the specifics with positive destinations, the specifics fluctuate from year group to year group with specific cohorts, and you can see that with higher education now 23.30 and further education rising up to 27.18, and there's been a slight fall in employment figures. Employment figures across West schools in particular tend to be higher than they are across Highland, possibly due to seasonal employment previously with areas such as travel and tourism. The attendance and absence rates are there for members to see, and you can see that almost all are in line with National and Highland Council figures. They're not substantially different. We know that some of our very small schools, for instance, obviously the percentage can change quite dramatically with such things as illness of 1 or 2 pupils or a family illness impacting on that. The data is shared regarding free school meal entitlement, and we can see there that because of the small size of a lot of our schools, the information and data isn't there. But Broadford Primary School has got 17.4% with free school meals, and Portree Primary is 7.7%, and Portree High School's 8%. Looked after children on the whole across the whole of the ASG, quite small numbers, although we can see there in Portree High School we've got 17 looked after children in total. And in terms of EAL pupils, Portree Primary School we've got 14, and Portree High School we've got 16. If members look at information which was requested in advance of the report on standards and quality reports and school improvement planning, I've given you a very small summary there regarding the information currently in the standards and quality and improvement plans, and the focus there is specifically on the recovery curriculum, looking at health and well-being, mental health and well-being, physical health and well-being, literacy and numeracy and raising attainment. PEF continues to be allocated to schools individually on a basis regarding free school meals entitlement, and the projects which have just been submitted from all schools regarding plans for pupil equity funding are along the lines of health and well-being, literacy and numeracy as per school improvement plans. Attainment data has been requested previously, I know, by members, and just an update that the attainment data for high schools and ASGs will be provided in due course via business ward meetings where an attainment toolkit will be presented. It's hoped, I think, and just to be confirmed, that Nikki Grant will attend the ward business meeting, I think on the 7th of December, to share and pilot the current, the new attainment toolkit. So that should be very valuable for members to get an idea of this information. I was also asked to give a kind of update regarding mental health and well-being and some of the developments across the ESG. So I've shared some of that information, including the information which the psychological services have shared, which is giving information regarding mental health, additional support needs in early years, and links to advice and support on such areas as resources, helplines and such. And very recently on Friday, I had Matthew Muse, our Chief Educational Psychologist in the West area, delivering a short training session to our West head teachers at our weekly drop-in session, which we have on a Friday morning. So Matthew kindly came along and shared a lot of the resources and information and possible future contacts for supporting staff at this time, as well as pupils and parents. Two different examples of health and wellbeing resources that are being used currently in ASG are Seasons for Growth, supporting bereavement, and also the Decider Skills, which in particular has been developed across Portree ESG and Plockton ESG, and gives you some details regarding that, supporting youngsters' resilience and health and well-being, and that has been successful and is continuing to be rolled out across these areas and in other areas across the West and Highland. I've also given an update regarding the counselling services and the invaluable role of counselling care in Skye and Raasay to support the counselling services, and as a follow-up from the Scottish Government's allocation of counselling money to two ASGs on a role basis, both the Plockton and the Portree ASGs have adopted to support the counselling care service in Skye and Raasay, which I think is very commendable for the great service that it gives. So members, that's an overview regarding the report that was submitted, and I'll hand you back to the chair.
Thank you, Don, for your presentation. Appreciate that. Councillor Finlayson.
Yeah, thank you, Don, and can I congratulate you publicly on your new role as the interim Care and Learning Manager for the West. I'm sure you're enjoying the role and the challenges it presents, and there will be many challenges, I'm sure. I'd also like to thank you for the discussions you've had with myself as Chair of Education about the whole issue of standardising reports to area committees. But as we also agree, I think there's also got to be that local flexibility as well. And the report you presented today highlights the discussions that we had. So I'd like to thank you for that, John. As you would expect, I've got a few observations and maybe questions to ask. So I'm just going to go through the report, Don, so you can come back to me at the end if that's okay. And we know there are no school inspections happening at the moment, but very clearly, should they and when they do start, we've got a number of schools that are due inspections because there are a number that haven't been inspected. So I suppose, where are we in terms of supporting schools prepare for inspection, and what kind of support have we got in place? In terms of the staffing, again, thanks for that, John. A couple of queries over Elgol and Kilmuir. The teaching full-time equivalent suggests that Elgol have only got 0.4 of a teacher. I would imagine Ian Murray's maybe the head teacher's been missing. I think that's probably the case there, and maybe similarly with Knockbreak. So just highlighting that. Thank you for confirming the issue about the funding figures, and I appreciate that. The finance team have been stretched, so maybe we'll get the most up to date at the next meeting. So thank you for that. Clearly, school buildings, real passion of mine to get the school estate on Skye up to speed to make sure that we've got proper and modern learning environments for our young people. And we are hopeful and ambitious that Broadford and Dunvegan will be going forward as part of the capital programme and the Learning Estate Improvement Programme with support from the Scottish Government. I think it's really important to emphasise the difference that will make to these communities. So I'm sure you and I will be discussing that as we move forward on. An interesting figure in terms of the free meals uptake for P1 to 3. And I suppose, considering that the Scottish Government, if it goes the way that many people think, at Hollywood elections next year, we're going to be possibly rolling out free meals from P1 to P7. So interesting, for each primary school, it's only 57% of the P1 to 3. So that's an interesting figure, given that I know that there will be a lot, there'll be a lot more young people entitled and also able to take up that. So that's an interesting figure.
Sorry, John, you're slightly breaking up.
Okay, can you hear me now?
That's better, yep.
Yeah, so it's really that whole issue about, in rural areas, we do have an issue sometimes with parents taking free school meals, and it's how we can maybe make sure that we are supporting them. John, in terms of reporting to parents, maybe an update on how we're moving that forward. I know that school improvement planning has changed.
You're slightly breaking up again. We can't hear you.
How's that now?
Oh, that's better.
Going to be shouting now. Yeah, so school reports to parents, John, maybe an update.
Although you're gone again. I don't know what you're doing. Like, because 1 minute it's really clear. When
how's that now?
That's okay.
Okay, I'll hold it up. School, are you hearing that? Reporting to parents, John?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, where are we with that? The whole issue round about PEF funding, I'm still concerned that we're not getting the right amount to rural areas. So there will be some schools that aren't getting PEF funding. We're not taking account of rural deprivation. I know that as a council, we want to make representation to the Scottish Government about that. So just really, is that something that concerns you, that maybe our schools that maybe could get PEF funding aren't? And my final point is thank you for that, a list of who everyone is in the council, Don. I do not know that we've got a number of vacancies. So I think it's important that we as members support you to make sure that we get the vacancies filled. Because there are a number of vacancies in social work, children's service workers, youth justice, QIOs. So we need to make sure that we try and get these filled. Thanks, Don.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John, and thank you for the thanks at the beginning. It's very much appreciated. And thanks to members, and a reminder to members that if there are any queries, please just get directly in touch with me about things, because that can be very helpful. In terms of inspections, John raised the issue of potential impending inspections once Education Scotland, the Care Inspectorate, come back online, which will probably be at the beginning of next session. In terms of looking at that, there has been a recent appointment of an acting quality improvement manager in the West area, Stephen Hamilton at Coole Primary School, a very experienced head teacher, which is great to join the West team. We're awaiting an advert going out for an acting QIO in order to support this. Obviously, we've had some, over the last 2 years almost, we've had some changes within structures, and we're still in an interim position regarding structures. But hopefully as we move ahead, we'll get more clarity around that, including clarity at area level regarding supporting and challenging schools as part of the quality improvement process. Thank you, John, for highlighting the staffing regarding areas like Helgal. Yes, you've highlighted the details regarding that. Funding, again, we will hopefully get more updated details later. School buildings, I would reiterate what John was saying regarding the importance of supporting our schools and school communities and school buildings, and obviously the planned developments for Broadford and for Dunvegan. And we had recent update from Robert Campbell regarding Dunvegan and potential two modular units going to Dunvegan early next year, and the timescales and such to be confirmed in due course to link with planned future buildings. So that's a positive. In terms of free school meals entitlement, this is an annual thing, especially across, I would say, rural areas where the uptake does not tend to be as high. Every year the schools reiterate and share via school newsletters and information in school handbooks regarding free school meal entitlement, and we still have ongoing issues with people not claiming or not getting when they should do so. So that's an ongoing area, both Highland-wide and locally. In terms of reporting to parents, currently there is an online trial with a number of schools looking at a range of online platforms to support parents' evenings and to facilitate parents' evenings. I know that there's been queries around the safety regarding or the accessibility of some of the platforms being suggested. So we're awaiting news of the review of the pilots are taking place in order to move forward. PEF funding, PEF funding, as it's highlighted in the report, is purely down to the free school meals entitlement. We know that rural deprivation is a challenge, and we know that a lot of the factors that we know regarding rural education and supporting rural education may not necessarily be visible, but we know that schools are working individually, and there are some examples of schools working very well across ESGs in order to maximise and facilitate as best as possible the PEF funding in order to do that. So that's an ongoing thing. And in terms of vacancies, we're currently working with business support and workforce planning on a range of vacancies as we move forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Councillor MacLeod. Callum.
Oh, thanks, Chair. Morning, Don. Thanks very much. That's been a very comprehensive insight there, and I know I'm sure the Chair of Education that we've got on board here have been very active in supporting all the good work that you're having to do at the moment, because clearly with COVID, as we've been hearing across the piece at the moment, it's a big issue. And it's really just, I see you've set out again comprehensively a lot of the measures that are in place to support pupils at the moment with counselling. Mental health, obviously, through COVID is a big issue. And it's really just with this affecting communities and families, just how confident you are that the provision is both adequately funded and supported from both Highland Council and the Scottish Government. Thanks.
Thank you, Colin.
Thank you, Councillor MacLeod. We've been working very closely, obviously, with we've got 9 associated school groups in the West area, and in that 9, we've had, over the last number of months, we've had 5 cases of COVID being identified, 5 positive cases which has impacted on 5 of our schools, none of which have been in Skye and Raasay. But in terms of the support that we've had from the health protection team and from environmental health, the NHS, the welfare support within the Highland Council, and the support via psychological services and additional support needs, and linking to local members and to ward business managers, what I would report back to members is that we've had very, very good support, and it's been very, very supportive to the schools and the communities. What we do in terms of any time there is a specific outbreak or a specific positive case identified, the head teacher contacts the health protection team, and that sets in place a chain of events which leads to the help and support for the school, including letters going out to the parents, to the wider community, to local members and such. So in terms of the processes to support COVID, the processes are very tight and the processes are continually improving. On top of that, what we have is we normally have within a day or 2 of the identification of the positive case, I will arrange a meeting with our link with the tactical team within Highland Council regarding supporting COVID, and it's a very broad branch tactical team with partner agencies right across the board in Highland Council. But from that, I have a meeting arranged with parents and the community in the schools concerned, where we have a selection of council officers come along and outline their help and support, including, very importantly, the area of welfare and supporting free school meals when youngsters are self-isolating and such things as getting vouchers, but also any concerns regarding welfare and benefits and such. And what the feedback that we've had from the communities who've had the self-isolation because of COVID have been very, very positive towards the schools, but also very positive towards the Highland Council and their support and the different agencies being in place. The last of these meetings I had last week in Mallaig, from Mallaig High School, and again the information was shared was very, very positive, and the information shared was fed back to the senior leadership team on Friday, and this morning I attended a tactical meeting with the tactical team and fed back the information that we'd received from the meeting with the Mali parents. So we're happy with the help and support that's been given. We're also very happy with in Skye and Raasay with the counselling service, the very well established counselling service, and I was very fortunate to be one of the members, along with a number of others who were involved in setting up the service kind of 14 odd years ago. So I'm very pleased that the service is still there, and it's proving invaluable to supporting our schools and our school communities.
Yeah, thanks, Don. Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Don, for talking to this report. There is a huge amount of information here. Congratulations on your own appointment, and also a really sincere thank you and well done to you and your officers, staff, non-teaching staff, teaching staff and head teachers for getting our children back to school and safely. And you've just outlined there all the support you've had, the services had from public health and NHS and so on, environmental health. So it's great, we've got our children to school safely. A few points, just picking up the figures here, about a snapshot in a sense. It would be good to see trends over the last 4 or 5 years, perhaps, and maybe a projection, thinking about the school roles and so on. I also had a quick calculation about Gaelic medium, English medium, and we've got about 47% of our children going to Gaelic medium in Skye and Raasay. It would just be good to have that in context. Is that staying steady? Is it increasing or decreasing? The other table to do with school, their staffing, it's again, it's it doesn't maybe go all the way to explaining the dynamics head teachers are facing in terms of staffing, getting supply. So it'd be really good to get an idea of how, anecdotally, how we are off our staff availability, vacancies, particularly maybe in Gaelic medium 2. Where are we? Do we have enough supply? Are all the posts filled at the moment? Same for the high school, particularly thinking about the Gaelic medium delivery there. And just one other little thing, Don, this is to do with the buildings. And I noticed that staff in primary school is classed as C for suitability. Now, I think staff is about 25, 26 years old. I was quite surprised. It's only at 58% capacity. I was wondering, do you have any idea of the factors which are, classing it as C? Obviously, some of our schools definitely would be C, Commuir, Broadford, Dunvegan. I just wondered if there's any particular factor in staffing, Don. Thank you.
Thanks, Callum.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Munro, and thank you for the thanks as well. In terms of trends, we've got the up-to-date information regarding school roles, and we know that in some areas, because of the demographics, we have got falling school roles, and I think you can see that in particular, maybe most starkly when we look at Portree High School, in terms of the numbers there, because going back not too long, we had 650 odd at Portree High School, and now we've got 480 odd. So you can see there that across the areas, things change. Probably in terms of the rurality, there is more of a kind of growth in and around Portree, whereas in some of the more rural areas, then fluctuates continually depending on families and the demographics. And that's probably the case with Gaelic medium as well. It's difficult to actually pinpoint any specific details regarding trends in Gaelic medium because we've got such small numbers in most of the schools, and when you even look at it in terms of from year to year, it can change quite dramatically depending on very small families. So I think that possibly maybe in the future, linking with Lena Walker and the Gaelic team, there could be more analysis done regarding that. But we don't have the specific data to share just now. Staffing and staffing challenges is a universal issue nationwide just now. In particular in Highland, we know that we've got staffing challenges in terms of supply, and that's even more so, I would say, in our more rural areas, and even more so in the specifics of Gaelic medium. We've been very fortunate in a sense that we had one vacancy, well, current vacancy at Kilmuir Primary School, and we advertised and re-advertised a full-time 1 FTE post for Gaelic medium, and we didn't get any applicants. And we fortunately managed to source a teacher through eSchool, which was great, and we've got that teacher currently. But we know that both nationally and locally there are challenges with the recruitment of Gaelic medium, and that's obviously one of the national priorities is supporting the recruitment, the training and recruitment of Gaelic medium staff, both at early years, primary and secondary, regarding that. So it is an ongoing challenge. I think this point regarding staffing was brought up several years ago regarding the actual allocation of the C evaluation, and I can't remember the specifics, but that's what had, because of a combination of criteria that they use, that led to the grading of C. But like you, when I look at staffing in the building, I don't necessarily see it as comparable with some of the other grade Cs. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Don. Well, thanks, Don, for your presentation and for all your hard work. And again, just add my thanks, like my ward colleagues, to everybody in Care and Learning, just for all the work that has been done over the last few months. I think it's been quite incredible, from the online teaching to getting the schools ready and safe for our pupils to return. So we want to give you our thanks to you and to all your colleagues, and we wish you very well in your new role. Thanks, Don.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Okay, members, we're on to item number 8, Area Roads Capital Programme Progress, and we're joined by Gordon MacDonald. Good morning, Gordon.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members.
Good morning. Thanks for this paper, Gordon. I'll just let you speak to it, and I'm sure there might be a few questions in common.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Members, you'll recall way back in March, you approved the road maintenance programme, the capital road maintenance programme. Essentially, as of the 1st of October, the council approved the release of our capital money for this year. Prior to that, we had a small amount of money that was allocated, thanks to the head of roads and transport approving an allocation. And in the appendix 2, the schemes that were approved back in March are there, plus a few extra ones which had been carried forward from 2019 and 20. Works at Brabust, Tarscavig, Loop and Shearda were all included in the programme for last year, but unfortunately that was unable to be completed prior to the end of the year. Those have been done earlier this summer. The remainder of the structural items on Appendix 2, we are hopefully starting to undertake that work now. Unfortunately, we're moving into the winter, and winter maintenance is our primary function. So we'll endeavour to do what we can within the weather window that is available to us, to get as much of that work done as well. One other issue that we have to address is we entered into an agreement with a trunk road contractor to supply a significant amount of quarry materials for surfacing works on the trunk road. Those works will be getting undertaken between January and March of next year, Unfortunately, we can't undertake works at the same time as they're on site due to limitations in the quarry and the availability of lorries for hire. But basically, the programme that's before you is the programme that you previously approved back in March. Surface dressing wasn't completed. It is weather dependent, and the whole of that programme will be carried forward to the 21-22. And I think that's all with regard to our surfacing schemes. The report also goes on to mention some of the shared funding and income generation schemes. Works at the store car parks phases 1 and 2 are essentially complete, with the works in the Fairy Glen being completed later this month. The store car park phase 1 has been open to the public since July and has been raising income since then. Going forward, one of the next programmes will be the works at the Kerrang, where a further car park or extension to the original car park is to be undertaken. That would ideally have been started as soon as we finish at the store. However, there are issues with our salt store in Ferrybridge. Unfortunately, a notice to quit was served on us, and we have to basically vacate Ferrybridge and restore that site to its original condition. So due to the lack of resources, effectively undertaking that work is going to delay us starting the next phase of the Kerrang. But hopefully at some point before the end of the year, we will get that started. That's, if anybody has any questions, I'll happily take them.
Thanks, Gordon. Councillor Finlayson.
Okay, thank you, Gordon, and thank you for the report. Gordon, in terms of the capital money, on the late approval, I'm assuming that any underspend and any money that we haven't spent this financial year will be able to carry forward into the next financial year to enable us to continue with the important works that need to be done. And I assume that would also include the surface dressing money. So it's really just about the carry forward and making sure that the money that we get for our area, we don't lose it and we get to spend it all. The other one, Gordon, is I'm conscious of the fact that we have had local communities in touch about things like ditching, about offlets. And again, where are we in terms, have you got the equipment locally to enable you to carry out these works when the men aren't on winter gritting, etc.? Because I think, as we all know, that if we can facilitate proper drainage and ditching, it does extend the life of our roads. And my final point is to thank you and the team for the great work that you have done with these shared funding and income generation schemes. There's a power of work being done. And I think the real success of the work being done is the fact that we've taken on board the local knowledge that you and the men have, and we've kept the work to local contractors. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Finlayson, for your comments. I cannot confirm that the carry forward, if it was unspent, would be available to us next year. That's out with our control. At the moment, I cannot say whether it will be available. What all I can say is we will endeavour to get as much as the money that is available to us currently spent prior to the end of the financial year. It's out with my control whether it's carried forward or not. In terms of ditching, locally, we don't actually hold a significant amount of plant. We don't have diggers within our depots. We tend to hire as required, and we will endeavour to hire machines to undertake ditching. There's currently ditching being undertaken on the Sligahan to Dunvegan road at the moment. We will hopefully try and continue that while we are undertaking surfacing works and other works. We do have aspirations for certain items of plant in terms of tractor that may be available with a power arm, flail and ditch cleaner. Now, clearly that's an item of plant that would be very useful to us, and would pursue that if we have the opportunity to do so. In terms of the car park jobs, the local contractors have done a power of work and have been extremely helpful and useful for these works, and I can't thank them enough also. Without them, it wouldn't work. Clearly, they are the key to getting this type of work done, is utilising the local contractors and the DLO where the work is appropriate for the DLO.
Thank you, Gordon. Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Gordon, for the support. Thank you very much. I think Councillor Finlayson picked up on the points I was going to ask you about. Just, Gordon, you know, the challenges you faced this year in particular in terms of the seasons, you know, seasons change, you can't go on with the overlay and or surface dressing. You've got the challenges of working around other contractors from get materials from the quarry. The budgets were till October. So for all those challenges, well done. And for section 5 of this report to do with the shared fund and income generation, that's a success story using local contractors and partnership working too. So I know it's a big undertaking, but hopefully it's paying off now in terms of income. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Colin.
Thank you, Councillor Munro. I'd just like to add, in terms of the local contractors that are working with us, the funding that was available for these schemes, I believe over 90% of that funding has been retained within Skye, with a small amount of it being spent with a local contractor in Glenelg, and the remainder was on hiring, the remainder of the 10% was on hiring offices and welfare units in Inverness. So basically 90% of the funding on the store scheme was spent and retained within Skye and the local communities.
Amazing, thank you. Councillor McLeod.
Thank you, Chair, and yeah, thank you, Gordon, to you and your team. I think you've really been fantastic the way you've managed to keep us up to speed and keep the roads with the best possible maintenance programme you've been able to do recently, and I think it's been great. I think a lot of the particular issues that I was going to touch on have been raised there, and I hope that we have a mild winter that proves to be kind to the roads. And yeah, again, just thanks very much, particularly with COVID. Obviously, that's proved to be more than challenging in some areas. So you've been really great the way you've dealt with it. Thanks very much, Gordon.
Thank you, Callum. Yeah, I'd like to add my thanks too. I think when we look at, particularly 5.1, well, all of 5, the amount of work that has been done at various hotspots around the island, it's made a huge difference. And again, I think the partnership working has brought many solutions to some of the places where we had so many complaints and issues, and it's made a huge difference. And I keep saying it, I was saying it at a meeting recently, the pots of money might be small, but they made a huge difference to the island. And again, I think the money that's come in from different partners has just transformed various parts of the island. So a big well done to you and to our ward manager and to all the other partners in terms of that. And I think going into winter, I mean, it's a time where people do complain about more roads in terms of potholes or the state of the roads. But I think when we look at this roads programme, it is encouraging that various parts of the island where maybe we get quite a number of complaints are on that programme. So I just hope that there is a bit of patience in terms of where we're at, because it is a good programme for 2020 into 2021, and For me here in Portree, I get quite a lot of village about the village centre, and again, it's mentioned in this report that Portree Village will get done. So I just hope that people are encouraged by this, and that people know that at some point the roads that we get the most complaints about are going to be done, and that we are on the case. And Gordon has highlighted that and has come up with a really good programme. And one other point, just in terms of the pelican crossing in Portree, I'm not sure if it's a pelican crossing or a zebra crossing. I need to Google the difference, but the moving of that along in the green in Portree, I think is going to make a huge difference. And certainly I've heard a lot of comments over the weekends that it's a more appropriate place for it instead of outside the toilet. So well done with that one too.
Well, and unfortunately, I can't take any credit for the crossings. That's part of the Bayfield Car Park development, which is being managed by the PDU.
Yeah.
But clearly, it is going to transform crossing problems that have existed there.
Yeah.
But the one further item, if I could mention, that isn't on the Appendix 2, and that is recent events that took place in Marishada with a local development which has caused damage to the road. One of the schemes that we've come to an agreement with the contractor that has caused the damage, that they will basically fund repair works on the road. Now, in order to maximise what they can get available, I've agreed with them that the DLO will undertake the works, thereby they will benefit from the most economic tar prices available, and it would maximise what will be available for the money that they can contribute to the repair works. Clearly, approximately 1 kilometre of road had been damaged, and they have agreed to fund that. So that will be taking place as well, which isn't included in the appendix.
Thank you, Gordon, for that. Does anybody else want to come back in? No? No. Well, thanks again, Gordon, for all your work and for all your team's work. We really appreciate it. And again, I know how frustrating it can be with the lack of finance and things like that, but we really do appreciate just the amount of work that you do, and it does not go unnoticed by us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, members.
Thanks, Gordon. Okay, item number 9, which is the Skye and Raasay investment plan, the proposed approach. And we're joined by Malcolm MacLeod, who's going to speak to the paper, and also I think Scott Galgarnio and Douglas Chisholm, as well as Stuart McPherson from HIE. He's back in the meeting, so a big welcome to you all. And again, Malcolm, thanks for this paper and for all the work you've done to date. I'll just let you speak to the paper, and then I'm sure there'll be a few questions or comments.
Thanks, Chair. So afternoon, members. Clearly, if you've got long memories, you will know that pre-COVID, we had intended to do this work to develop a Skye plan that sets out what our key investment projects are, whether they're from the smallest scale through to some of the work that Gordon's actually just been talking about, particularly related to tourism infrastructure, to the big projects, as Councillor Finlayson mentioned, the potential at Broadford, the potential in Portree in terms of the work that's going on there. So we're back on track, post the last kind of 6 months. I've put things a bit off course, but thanks to the really good work from Stuart McPherson, Willie, and Scott and his team, we've now at the stage where we bring this report to you. And I think it's really just gathering together what we're going to do over the next couple of months. with the idea of preparing this plan and having it come back to you in March, which will be a real collective effort for Scott and the team. And we have been speaking to Scottish Futures Trust, for example, who will help on elements of it. So there's really good partnership working. Stuart's done a pile of work through the Community Planning Partnership. As you can see in section 5.1, we're talking about the outcomes that'll cover some of the areas: sustainable tourism, digital and transport infrastructure, strengthening communities, health and education. And we want to bring together projects that will all contribute to the really clear outcomes we want from it. But a lot of work's already been done, and we're not going to come up with anything, spectacularly new or anything that undermines the good work that's already happening. I think what we want to do is just pull together all of the fantastic community effort that's out there, as well as the work being done by the public sector, and make sure that priorities and outcomes are still relevant, up to date. Are there any changes because of COVID? Look at benefits, value for money, crossover and interdependencies between projects, because I think there is so much going on in Skye and Raasay, and long may it continue. We want to make sure that we get the most benefit out of all of these projects, and whether it's in terms of low carbon benefits, whether it's in terms of digital benefits, but the key that runs through it is good partnership working. And then as we see, from the work that's already been done in other parts of Highland, such as Fort William 2040, the outcome for this is to be able to present to Scottish Government, or indeed the Council, or any other funders, a really comprehensive picture of where our priorities are, and that'll help us to bid for funding, as well as help community groups to bid for funding. So with that, members, we're just looking for your approval of what's set out in the paper, and obviously look forward to your continued involvement as we press forward on the consultation side of things.
Thanks, Malcolm. Thanks for all your work and for this paper. I don't know if Scott or Douglas or Stuart want to come in at this point or not.
No, nothing further to add, really.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Members, any questions or comments? Councillor Finlayson.
Yeah, so once again, can we thank Malcolm, and Scott, and Douglas, and Stuart. Unfortunately, COVID did impact on how quickly we move things forward. But I think it's great that we've got this report here today. For me, the key features are this place-based investment plan. We talk about localism, we talk about a place-based approach, and we've always championed that here in Skye and Raasay, because I do believe that we have got unique challenges. So it's important that we are finally bringing together the public sector, businesses, community interests, and most importantly, the wider community to agree a joined-up investment plan that supports our ward and its unique challenges. And probably the unique challenges that we've always faced have probably been modified or changed because of COVID-19. So recovery, of course, has to be part of that whole agenda. I think if we look at section 5, where there's a clear articulation of what are the outcomes that we're looking for. And I think that's really important, that during the engagement phase with the wider community, we have discussions and agreement around about these. And I don't think anyone would argue with sustainable tourism, diverse and green economy, digital and transport infrastructure, strengthening communities, and health and education. And I think you know well enough my commitment to improving education in particular on the island, so that we have 21st century learning facilities that are equal to other parts of the Highland. But I think what's also important, and Malcolm, I think you know my feeling about this, is when we have an opportunity to create something, we have got a project, a large project, it's so important to look at what else we can bring in as part of that project. We don't want ever to be in a situation where we deliver something and then we say, oh, if only we had. So it's really, really important that the engagement we have with the communities in the next part of this plan, it really takes account of their suggestions. And again, I hark back to some of the developments planned for Broadford and the school. We're going to bring in, hopefully, the other services. We're going to bring in a community hub. We're going to bring in housing. In Dunvegan, we're looking at a master plan. So we're looking for housing, and we're looking for the creation of a decent sports facility for the Northwest. So it's really just to reassure our communities that we are working together with all the agencies and other bodies to get the very best for Skye and Raasay. And it would be remiss of me not to say that the Islands Bill, which is meant to be supporting Scotland's islands, is not really supporting the second largest island in Scotland. We are not getting much benefit from the Islands Bill, which is really frustrating. We've also got the fact that maybe the Boundary Commission are also trying to give us less democratic people to represent the views of our area. So that's why it's important that we have this plan for Skye and Raasay that is unique to our area, that represents our needs, that looks at all the positive things that are happening. And the final point I'd like to make is that in terms of the list that we will be bringing forward, I'm sure there'll be lots of community members who may have additional items to add to that list. So it's really just to ask Malcolm, that I'm sure it is the case that we're going to facilitate other projects that maybe we don't know about. But I think it's really reassuring to see the wealth of projects we've got already. So we need to make sure that Highland-wide, Scottish Government-wide and UK-wide, there's a recognition of our unique challenges here. And I think we've got a great opportunity here to make a real difference to the Isle of Skye and Raasay. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Finlayson has really hit the main points I think we all feel about this, but we're just glad to be at this stage, and this plan has come to this stage. So thank you all, and it's great. We're also got this partnership working with HIE, and Stuart's input has been crucial too. I'm just looking forward to getting these all these potential projects on the table and to cross-reference them with all these outcomes, because I think these outcomes we've identified are just exactly what our communities in Skye and Raasay need in terms of strengthening communities and sustainable tourism and so on. Our digital, connectedness is so important. I think too, the people of Skye and Raasay really now need to see that we have this. We have to show them that we're serious and that we are actually going to take steps. So I think these engagement sessions in January and December, in fact, are really important. We get all stakeholders engaged, and that we just show that we mean business, that we are intending to really invest throughout this ward and take it forward. The other aspect I think which is really good, and Scott mentioned this last week, is that Highland Council are going to take a real maybe cross-service approach to this. There's going to be, we're not going to be stymied by service structures. It's going to be just getting onto it and people engaging and officers engaging and working to take this forward. So really exciting, and I can't wait to see all the projects and start to assess them and start moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Callum. Councillor MacLeod.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Malcolm, and all the team for bringing this with this collaboration that's been involved behind it. It's incredible, and it is, as Callum just said, very exciting time for Skye. Huge infrastructure problems being addressed here, and sustainable tourism is spoken about a lot, and it is very important for the future of Skye's tourism industry. And this really goes into great informative detail in some regards to how we address going forward with that. And we've spoke about the need for digital connectivity earlier with Stuart, and that's vital as well. And particularly as well, just to say that with a diverse and green economy, I think that's very heartening also, in projects like the Skye cycle route. I think, that will be fantastic to see that progress and feed into this. So it's just great to see. There's been much talk of it, and thanks very much for the report. Thank you.
Thanks, Callum. Yeah, I'd just like to add my thanks too. I think from the very first day of this new council, when we were all discussing and talking about our priorities, and one of them was a Skye plan or that idea. Okay, we're calling it now an infrastructure and investment plan, but it's great now just to see this, you know, progressing and taking shape. And yeah, just want to add my thanks to Malcolm and Scott, Douglas, and Stuart, and all their team. It's just going to make a huge difference. And again, I think it just brings confidence to our communities that work is happening. And I said it earlier, but I just cannot emphasize or overemphasize rather the amount of work that has happened in the last 3+ years in terms of infrastructure on the island. It's made a huge difference, and this, you know, being brought before us today, just brings confidence and encouragement not only to us but to our communities as well as we go forward. So thanks to everybody involved in this, and we just look forward to future papers and just seeing this come to fruition. So councillors, members are asked in 2.1 to agree the recommendations. I'm sure we all agree with them. Agreed, members, yeah?
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Malcolm, for presenting this.
Thanks, members. We'll get on with it now. We've got a tight deadline, so we'll get on with it. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so item number 10, which is an additional paper, is the Town Centre funds, and we're joined by Alan Webster. Good morning. It's even the afternoon, Alan. Good afternoon, Alan.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for getting this paper to us so late in the day as well, so we appreciate that. So I'll just hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon, members. Just pull up my notes. The paper before you essentially focuses on a number of possible options for identifying potential projects in Broadford and Portree that benefit from the additional 56,000 Town Centre Funds grant allocated to this area committee earlier this month by the E&I committee. The thrust of this second award is broadly similar to the first tranche of grant. However, there are a few key points that I would like to draw your attention to. Looking at 1.2, while a town centre focus remains with the fund, it does form part of the Scottish Government's National Economic Recovery Stimulus Package, and there is an explicit expectation that the extra funding is to stimulate local construction activity to support employment across Highland. So that was something that was in the grant offer, a very clear steer there into the types of projects expected. And because it is economic stimulus funding, it is time limited, with expenditure needing to be complete or committed by the end of March 21. If we only get commitment by then, the full spend needs to be achieved by the end of September 21. So we are dealing with a short timetable. Paragraph 4.2 of the paper outlines the key conditions of grant. These are pretty much identical to the first award. The main point that I would labour here is that the grant is for capital expenditure only. In terms of that first tranche of TCF grant, Section 5 highlights a key difference in the decision-making process between the first grant and the second grant. Previously, members of this committee made a recommendation to the TCF working group as to which projects should benefit from funds, and that cross-party subgroup ultimately finalised matters. This time round, there is no working group, and the final decision rests with this committee. Section 6 outlines the 4 possible options for identifying potential projects to benefit from additional grant. So I'll just quickly run through the 4. Given that time is of the essence, option 1 focuses on targeting existing TCF projects and providing top-up funds. This could be undertaken quite quickly, and existing grant contracts could be modified accordingly. Alternatively, you could support other projects that are shovel-ready and can be delivered within the allotted timescales. A possible third option could be an open call for bids, as we did last time. And finally, the 4th option is to work with established organisations in Broadford and Portree to develop projects. Paragraphs 6.3 to 6.6 inclusive run through the relative merits of each approach. I'll just quickly touch on each of them. As it stands today, there has been no request for additional TCF grant from either of the 2 TCF projects, so that effectively discounts option 1. In terms of option 2, An initial review would suggest that there are no projects that you probably sufficiently developed that would fall into that shovel-ready category. Option 3, the open call, as I say, is what we did last time. However, the budget available this time round is a quarter of what was available in the first tranche. So there is a risk that demand could exceed the amount of grant available. And that approach could make it challenging to agree a fair and equitable split of available funds between Broadford and Tree, which I understand is members are keen to achieve. The conclusion drawn is that on balance, option 4, which involves working with both Broadford and Strath Community Company and the Portree and Braes Community Trust, offers a practical way forward. It allows for an even split of the available funds between the two eligible towns, and it also mitigates against community groups competing against one another for what is a relatively small amount of money. So that leads me on to the final paragraph of the report, members, which deals with the final decision-making process. If option 4 is how you wish to proceed, it does pose a challenge for bringing proposals back to you for consideration, as the next timetable committee is the 1st of March 21. So that would offer a very short window to get grant offers out or modified and any tendering of any proposed works. Therefore, it's suggested that consideration is given to convening a special meeting to agree the projects to benefit from TCF investment. That concludes all I've got to say just now, Chair.
Thank you, Alan. Councillor Finlayson.
Thanks again, Alan. In terms of 6.2, my understanding is that you've possibly had engagement with both Broadford and Portree Community Company and Trust. I attended a Broadford Community Council meeting recently, and I think while we're all agreeing that option 4 is the best way forward, perhaps option 1 needs to be discussed a bit more with Broadford, because I think we're all aware of the additional funding costs that are likely to come forward because of the material costs, etc., etc. So my understanding is that option 1 might be worth considering as well. And I categorically agree, we do need to set a date for a special committee meeting. And I think it's important to do that. So it's very early on in the new year. And we do have ward business meetings on a Monday. So I'm suggesting that in discussion with Willie, the ward manager, we try and get a date in the diary ASAP.
Thank you, John. Councillor Munro. I think you're on mute, Callum.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I took down my hand but left the microphone on mute. Thank you, Alan, for producing this at such a short notice. We appreciate that, and that's maybe what I was trying to voice in the previous agenda item, just as a can-do attitude. Really appreciate you getting this to us for this area committee. I was going to agree with your recommendations in light of Councillor Finlayson's input from Broadford and Strath Community Company. I think we have to be flexible too, so if they require a top up to an existing project, well, we can certainly be flexible, I feel. But I think the recommendations you have made, that we go with the established organisations in Broadford and Portree, I would agree with that, and we'll get a date in January to discuss these. So thanks, Alan.
Thanks, Colin. Councillor MacLeod.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you very much, Alan, particularly obviously for getting this to us in such a timely fashion. And yeah, I too would agree to go with the recommendations. And as has been outlined by both John and Callum, I think further dialogue might be needed there, but that's great. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. So the recommendations are in our papers, 2.1. So we agree the recommendations.
Agreed.
Agreed. Well, thanks, Alan, for all your work and for getting this paper to us, and we'll see you early in the new year.
No problem at all, members. My pleasure. Look forward to seeing you in the new year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Well, that's the last item on the agenda, so